The first time I heard about Sammie Dean, it wasn't as a ghost story. It was told to me like a crime scene. I was sitting in a small place in Jerome after work when one of the older locals leaned forward and said, "They found her in an alley." He didn't smile when he said it, didn't lower his voice for effect. He just kept talking. Said she had been working that night, said a man had gone with her, and sometime before morning, he wrapped his hands around her throat and left her there. The old man told me people in town said the alley stayed wrong after that, too quiet, too cold, like something in it had never finished happening. Then he looked at me and said, "They say she still walks Jerome at night, looking for the man who killed her." I remember trying not to react, because at first, it still sounded like a local legend built around an old murder. Until he added one more thing. He said if she ever stops walking and just stands there looking at you, you leave. And for some reason, that was the moment the story stopped sounding like folklore. I was in Jerome for work, not tourism, not ghost hunting. I was there as part of a short volunteer medical outreach program. A few of us had been sent out to help with checkups and follow-up care for older residents in smaller Arizona communities. Jerome was one of the stops. I didn't know much about it before I got there, just that it was an old mining town built into the mountainside. During the day, it almost looked peaceful, quiet roads, old brick and wood buildings, steep hills. But even then, there was something about the town that felt unsettled. The man who told me about Sammie Dean didn't talk like someone trying to scare me. He talked like he was repeating something the town had never really put down. He said people had seen her for years, a woman walking the roads and narrow alleys late at night, not screaming, not attacking anyone, just moving through town like she was still searching. He said some people heard heels on stone when no one was there. Some said they caught the smell of perfume in empty streets. Others said they saw a woman standing at the far end of an alley, too still to be real. Then he said something that made the whole table go quiet. He said sometimes she stops, and when she does, she looks at people like she's trying to decide whether she's found him. No one at the table laughed after that. That should have been enough for me. A sad story, an old murder, a town with too much memory. But the truth is, once I heard it that way, I couldn't stop thinking about the alley. Not the ghost, not at first, the alley. The idea of a place holding on to the worst thing that had ever happened there. Maybe that stayed with me because I work in medicine, because I'm used to thinking in terms of cause and effect, evidence, damage. By the third night in Jerome, curiosity had already done what fear should have stopped. I decided I was going to walk the town alone after dark. I waited until late. Most of the town had gone quiet by then. The roads were mostly empty. The lights were thin and uneven. I left where I was staying with a flashlight in my jacket pocket and my phone in my hand. The air outside was cold and dry, and once I got away from the places with lights, Jerome changed. During the day, it looked historic. At night, it looked hollow. At first, nothing happened. I walked past old storefronts, stairways, and quiet side streets. Then I noticed I was listening too hard. That was when I heard the second set of footsteps. I turned around, no one, just an empty slope, a wall, and darkness between buildings. Then I started walking again. A few seconds later, so did the footsteps. I ended up near one of the older, narrow passages people had mentioned earlier that evening. It wasn't much more than an alley between two aging buildings, with uneven ground and a drop in light halfway through. That was where I smelled it, perfume. Old-fashioned, sweet, powdery, and completely out of place. It didn't drift in gradually. It was just there all at once, strong enough to stop me where I was. But the alley was empty. That was the first moment I thought about turning back for real. I should have gone back then. Instead, I stepped deeper into the alley. At the far end of the alley, where it opened toward another narrow road, I saw someone standing there. Still, at first, my brain did what it always does. It tried to make the image normal. But even from that distance, something felt wrong. She wasn't moving, not shifting her weight, not looking around. I couldn't make out her face clearly, but I could see the outline of her body, the shape of her dress, the length of her hair, and the way her head was angled slightly toward me, like she had already been watching me for a while. I didn't say anything. I didn't even raise my flashlight. I just stood there staring back. Then she turned, slowly, and started walking away. I know I should have let her go, but by then I was too far and too curious. So I followed her.
Wait,
she moved through Jerome like she belonged to it more than anyone living there ever could. Down one narrow road, across a stairway, past dark windows and leaning walls, past dark windows and leaning walls, past dark windows and leaning walls, past dark windows and leaning walls. Then she would turn a corner and somehow be farther away than she should have been. Once she passed beneath a light, and for a second I saw her more clearly. She was beautiful, not in a glamorous way, in a sad, almost unreal way. And there was something wrong with the way she held her neck. That was when I knew I was following the story, or it was leading me. She led me deeper into the quieter part of Jerome. I didn't hear any cars. I didn't hear any voices. I barely even heard the wind anymore. Only my own breathing, and every now and then, the sound of her steps ahead of me. Then she stopped. She was standing near the mouth of another alley, one darker than the last. My heart was beating too hard now. I had the overwhelming feeling that I was no longer the one following her. She had brought me there. She was looking at people, studying them, measuring them, trying to decide something. That was when I remembered what the woman at the table had said. If she ever stops walking and just stands there looking at you, leave. I should have listened. Instead, I took one more step. And that was when I heard breathing behind me, close, too close. I turned around immediately, knowing nothing. Then I looked back toward the woman. She was closer now. Close enough that I should have heard her move. Close enough that I could finally see her face. She didn't look monstrous. That almost made it worse. She looked human. And around her throat, I could see the dark, bruised shape. She looked at me with an expression that felt impossible to read. As if for one terrible second, she thought I might be the man she had been searching for. Then she spoke, or maybe whispered. I still don't know. I didn't hear actual words, not clearly. But I heard a woman's voice, low, broken. And the one thing that came through clearly was the feeling behind it. Not anger, not even hatred, just endless searching. It felt like I was standing in front of a wound that had never closed. A person trapped in the last question of her life. Who did this to me? I stepped back, then another step, and as I did, she tilted her head slightly, like she knew, like she understood I wasn't the one. The moment that thought hit me, the air changed. The cold got sharper, the perfume came back, and the light at the end of the road flickered. When the light came back steady again, she was gone. I didn't stay there another second, but the whole way back I had the same feeling, that something was just behind me. Once I thought I heard the sound of heels on stone, slow, measured. I didn't look back again. I got back to where I was staying and locked the door behind me. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I told myself the same thing I always tell myself after something I can't explain. Exhaustion, suggestion, a town full of stories and a brain willing to feed on them. But later that afternoon, while I was unpacking my jacket, I smelled it again. That same perfume, faint, powdery odor. There was no reason for it to be there. No source, no bottle, just the smell. For a few seconds, then it was gone. I finished the rest of my work in Jerome. I kept moving through my days like nothing had happened. But I never went back into those streets alone at night. Some people say ghosts haunt places. I think sometimes they haunt moments. And if they never get an answer, they stay there. I left Jerome, but every now and then when I'm walking alone somewhere quiet at night, I still hear it. A second set of footsteps behind me, slow, measured. And once in a while, for just a second, I catch the smell of perfume in the air. As if Sammie Dean is still searching, and for one terrible moment, still isn't sure it wasn't me.